Hi guys, Charlie from EV Powered here. It's time for another one of our electric car reviews, but this one's going to be slightly different because it's July in England, so as you'd expect, it's raining. So we've had to stand down our usual cameraman and all his fancy equipment because we just can't risk any of that getting wet. So today it's just me, my GoPro, and most importantly, this Hyundai Kona Electric. Now, just as recently as a couple of years ago, this Hyundai Kona Electric was only one of few options for those that wanted an electric car that was cheaper than a Tesla, but also had a properly decent range on it. Now, however, it's got to compete with the likes of the Kia eNiro, the Peugeot E2008 and the Volkswagen ID3. So in this review, we're going to be putting it through its paces to see how it compares to some of its closest rivals. Now, on this updated version of the Hyundai Kona Electric, it's had a bit of a facelift and it's now a fairly decent looking car, and that's mainly because they've removed that stupid cross-stitch pattern from the front grille of the older models and replaced it with this really simple, flowing, classy front end. You do have to say that when looking at this car straight on, it does look a little bit like a Tesla, especially with those ultra-thin headlights and that really smooth flowing body. You do also have this charging point at the front, which is really nice and convenient, but it is slightly off centre, which does make it look really weird and a bit out of place. Now, all things considered, when you're looking at the exterior of this car, I probably would put my neck on the line and say it's better looking than the Kia eNiro and the Peugeot E2008, but I'd perhaps go for a different colour rather than this Smurf blue. Whilst it may have scored some early points over its rivals, this version of the Hyundai Kona Electric does struggle to compete with the others once you start talking about its range. Now, there are other higher spec versions of this Hyundai Kona Electric which will offer you around 280 miles of range, which is decent, but you will of course have to pay for that. With this 39 kWh premium version, you'll have a range of around 189 miles, which is a lot less than the Kia eNiro's 280 mile range and the ID3's range of 215 miles. Having lost the battle on range, the Kona Electric also struggles to compete once you get inside. Now, when it comes to the inside of this car, there's not a great deal to shout about, unfortunately. There's a lot of cheap and scratchy materials all over the place, and it just does feel a bit tacky on the inside. There's also quite a lot of hard materials where you'd rest your arm when you're driving, such as up here and down there, and to be honest, I've had this car for about a week now and I've never truly felt comfortable in it, and that's even with the adjustable lumbar seats, which are meant to offer you a bit more support, but I've never really been settled into them. There are some good points, however, especially this driver's display, which is really crisp and clear and easy to navigate, and you also get this 10.3 inch infotainment screen, which is really good, nice and responsive, and you've got Android Auto and Apple CarPlay built in as well. Now, in the back, it's not too bad at all. I'm about 6'3" and I've got a fair amount of headroom there, and also I've got a decent amount of legroom here, so I could actually feel myself being pretty comfortable in the back of this car on a long journey. Now, if we come to the boot, there's even more disappointment, unfortunately, because it only has about 332 litres of boot capacity, which is far less than any other electric SUV, and it's even less than a Renault Zoe. It does open up here and you get these little compartments here, and there's a bit more storage underneath, but still it is pretty disappointing for a car of this size. Now, that's the outside and inside taken care of, so let's see what the Hyundai Kona Electric is like on the road. Okay, so it's safe to say that this Hyundai Kona Electric is by no means the quickest. This 34 kWh version can do 0 to 60 in 9.9 seconds. Now, that is slightly improved when you go up to the 64 kWh version, which can do 0 to 60 in about 7.5 seconds, which is more akin to the likes of the Kia eNiro and the Volkswagen ID3. Now, although it is an electric SUV and it doesn't particularly need that pace, it is still an electric car, so you still want it to have that feeling of pushing you back into your seat as soon as you put your foot right to the floor. Whilst it may not be the quickest, I have found it to be quite a smooth ride. Obviously the odd pothole and the severe speed bump will jolt you about just like any car, but for the most part it is quite smooth, and there's been times when I've been driving down country lanes and things like that and slinging it into corners, and it does seem to stick pretty well. So in that respect it's actually quite a comfortable car to drive. It's actually quite disappointing and quite annoying that you're not 100% comfortable in the seats and resting your arm up here, because in terms of purely just driving this car, it is actually quite an enjoyable experience. One good thing about this car not being particularly sporty is that you can get away with driving it in its Eco Plus mode, because there's no real severe drop off in performance like you do get in some other electric cars. Driving in Eco mode or even Eco Plus mode means you can really maximise your range and you can really get the most out of your charge. On the subject of charging, the smaller range means this car can charge from empty to full in 6 hours using a 7kWh home charger. When out and about, you should also be able to charge from 20 to 80% in around 40 minutes when using a 50kWh fast charger. Now, let's get back behind the wheel and find out some more about what it's like to drive this car. There's also 3 different settings for the regen braking, which can be manually adjusted using the flappy paddles behind the steering wheel. And now, while there are slight differences between those 3 different settings, neither of them are quite severe enough. I have found myself having to use the brake pedal quite a lot to come to a complete stop when approaching traffic lights and things like that, all of which really eliminates that one pedal driving ability. It is also dead noisy in this car. I've noticed as well with the rain, it's almost got like a tin can roof, so that is really loud, and just driving you do get a lot of road noise coming through as well, so that's another thing to consider. So now we've talked about how it looks, how it drives and how practical it is, how does the Hyundai Kona Electric compare to the others when it comes to price? Whilst this 39kWh premium Hyundai Kona Electric may be on the cheaper side of the lineup at £29,300, it still is only marginally cheaper than the Kia eNiro and the Volkswagen ID3. When you go up to the 64kWh version in the Ultimate trim, this car has an on-the-road price of around £37,000, which does sound expensive, but that does offer you a much improved range and greater performance. So, what's our final verdict on the Hyundai Kona Electric? While this 39kWh version of the Hyundai Kona Electric may be cheap and cheerful, it doesn't do enough to compare with the likes of the Kia eNiro, the Peugeot E2008 and the Volkswagen ID3. With that being said, once you go up the range and you go to the 64kWh version of this car, it does become a seriously good option if you're looking for a practical EV with a decent range on it. However, if it's just the 39kWh version you're looking at, I'd probably stick with the Kia, the Peugeot or the Volkswagen. That's all for this video. If you liked it, then please do drop us a like and remember to subscribe. You can also head over to our channel to check out more electric car reviews, and for daily news coverage, features and much more, head over to evpowered.co.uk. Thanks for watching and we'll see you on the next video.